The doctor's in the house to help us with the clouds on This Week in Cloud Computing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 52 of This Week in Cloud Computing. I'm your host, Amanda Coulong, returning from South by Southwest. Heard a lot of cloud news there. And we also have my co-host, Dave Linthicum, joining from yet another hotel room. Right, Dave? It looks like you're in another hotel
I'm
room.
low bandwidth hotel room Dave this week.
Well, we shall manage, and thank you for putting up with me being out last week.
Yeah, that was a big shock. I expected you, and I saw Yuri's face. I was
know,
like,
I
oh my God.
transformed into Yuri Budnick.
You need to warn me next time.
I did. Look at your production notes.
Oh, sorry about that.
No
I don't
problem.
read before the show.
Well, today we have a doctor in the house, Dr. Michael Salsburg, the chief architect for Unisys Cloud Computing. So excited to have Dr. Michael joining us, and we'll get into that discussion in just a minute. But before we dive in, if you want to participate in the discussion today, follow us on Twitter at TweeCloudComp and use the hashtag TWICC. That way we can grab any questions that you have and answer them here on the show. Also, you can subscribe on iTunes and make sure you're downloading us, listening to us in the car and those long commutes, you know, that sort of thing. So, and make sure you're rating the shows too. That really helps us quite a bit. So, and that's me. I know, Amanda Coulong, imagine that. We also are looking for sponsors at thisweekend.com, but we have an awesome new sponsor, Zenoss. So make sure that you're checking these guys out at Zenoss, Z-E-N-O-S-S. So it's a next generation cloud management solution that's really designed to unify operations and ensure service levels. We all talk about SLAs on the show. Data center operators use Zenoss in a lot of ways to manage their IT infrastructure wherever it's deployed. So whether it's physical or virtual or in the cloud, it manages everything, your network, your servers, virtual devices, storage, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it really manages everything for you. So some big guys, some real well-established names like Rackspace, OpSourceHosting.com, all these guys are using Zenoss to ensure that they're meeting customer requirements. So if you look at this right here, we have a special just for This Week in Cloud Computing fans. If you download the Zenoss ebook, 5 burning questions, can you really manage the cloud? And you can get entered to win an iPad 2. So all the Apple stores are sold out of these things, apparently, from what I can tell. So if you want an iPad 2, just go sign up and download the ebook. It's that simple. Plus, it's a really good ebook. But anyway, make sure you check out Zenoss, Z-E-N-O-S-S, at Zenoss, and get that ebook. So let's jump into, I believe, some news. Well, I want to get Dr. Michael Salsburg in on this discussion just out the gate. We have Unisys news today. They've launched a 3-pronged cloud effort today to help enterprises get the cloud at their own pace, and they're calling it hybrid enterprise. So I want to start off here with Dr. Michael. John Treadway actually said that you're attempting to answer the question, I've got 1 billion applications, where am I going to run them? So Dr. Michael, what's going on with this? Can you fill us in a little bit more?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. Right now, when you look at what's being offered by different cloud providers, they're happy to provide you a cloud so you can take advantage of cloud computing. But there's a bigger question, which is how does that fit into what you're already doing? Because cloud is rarely used in a totally greenfield environment. So if you start with the traditional data center that's in place for, basically we're looking at enterprise quality workloads, you know, with high demands for SLOs, as you mentioned, and availability. And now you add a cloud to it. Do you want that cloud to just be in a corner somewhere, or do you want it integrated with everything else you're doing? So if you look at applications today, they can spread across. Pieces of it can be in your data center, can be in your private cloud, can be in a public cloud. How do you put that all together? And that's what the hybrid enterprise is all about.
Great. Dave, do you have questions about this specifically?
Yeah, I mean, this seems to be kind of the classic direction. Cloud Connect. Everybody was talking about the hybrid enterprise and the hybrid cloud computing model. Ultimately, is the way to go. Is this really, ultimately, when the enterprise is driving this direction, it's a much more easier transition because in essence, they're kind of hedging their bets and basically adding cloud systemically into their enterprise architecture versus, kind of like you said, put it off in the corner in its own little domain, or perhaps even go too far into the cloud too quickly and fail.
Well, what we're finding is that as we talk to our customers and to other prospects, they're already doing hybrid cloud kind of workloads and hybrid cloud kind of computing because they've looked at the cloud and they see that the financial model is very compelling. So they find some workloads or some bits of their workloads that they can take advantage of right now. So the question is, now that we already have hybrid cloud computing going on, is how do you put that all together? And the hybrid enterprise includes not just the data center and cloud, but also includes outsourcing all the different kinds of deployment models that a CIO has to choose from. And they don't have to choose from one. They can use them all.
So isn't this really kind of an education exercise when you get right down to it? In other words, the technology, is working and it's fairly simple to get it up and running, but really it's the CEOs and the CIOs and the C-levels within these enterprises and within the government that need to kind of transition their thinking to, I think, what you guys are proposing here. Is there any kind of condition in your strategy and to get them up and knowledgeable around the benefits of cloud computing and how to make use of it?
Oh, absolutely. Really, a lot of what John Treadway's been talking about is cloud build services. So we provide advisory services that focus on what are your applications, where should they best be placed. Maybe they're much better suited to stay in the data center, maybe the cloud, maybe straddling both the data center and the cloud. So there's a lot of upfront analysis of what's really going on and how can they take advantage of all these different options.
Well, sounds like you guys are going to have a fun time.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Well, we'll get into some more specifics around Unisys here in a little bit. Let's jump into our next story. Why don't we? Platform as a service startup .cloud has received $10 million in funding from Benchmark Capital and Trinity Ventures. So the company had previously received about $800,000 in angel investment. And GigaOM is calling .cloud a hybrid PaaS SaaS environment, like a mix between Heroku, Amazon's Elastic Beanstalk, and CloudFormation. So you can deploy application stack components really at the push of a button and get at the underlying infrastructure if you want to. So the big question I want to ask here for both of you is, will openness in platform as a service ultimately be defined as giving users some access under the hood? Dave.
Yeah, they got to give them some access under the hood. Just by the fact of the matter that it's a platform as a service environment means that it's a development environment, which means I should be able to do development. So I get a little nervous when I hear this push button, to getting the applications up and running. It's something we've been hearing for years and years and years. And the reality is, I think that you need to kind of strike a balance between the ease of use of the system and the flexibility of the system and the ability to get in there and customize and actually make it happen. I mean, Mark had a great phrase back when he was doing the show about getting to the metal, and I think that most developers want to get to the metal when they build these sorts of things. However, I think that the platform as a service space is ripe for growth. I think it's the least grown areas if you compare it with platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, and software as a service. And I think these guys probably have a pretty good offering, and they're going to go out and give the other bigger guys a run for the money. The difficulty is going to be is try to provide a specialized offering with a niche kind of a strategy around the Elastic Beanstalk, which Amazon is going to be going like gangbusters with, around App Engine with Google, around Azure, around Engine Yard, and all the established players that, quite frankly, have been around for 3-4 years. They're not new guys.
Dr. Michael, do you agree with this?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I agree. When you hear about push-button application development, it doesn't sound like the applications are very robust. If you want to put together simple e-commerce applications and you're a new company and you want to get something up really quickly, it sounds, there's a lot of platform as a service offerings that can help you out. We're more focused on more enterprise applications which require customization. So I don't see push button working for that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I think that the push button aspect of this is really spin. And I think if you go into the company, they're going to say, we really provide, ease to get to the application development environment, and it's push button to get certain components up and running. But as far as pushing a button, and getting to some kind of a workable application, I mean, they understand that that's kind of silly. So you're seeing a little bit of marketing spend from this, and probably there's, too many PR agents in the list on this. And now that they got some dough, they're going off and buying a CMO, and this is going to be one of the problems as people drive into this area, is that they're going to try to basically hype the technology they have to make it seem better and better and more capable than some of the existing technology, and it just ends up confusing the market. It certainly confused me and the doctor.
So we may be seeing a bit of cloud washing with this one then.
Wash away.
Wash away, wash away. Well, let's jump into some Microsoft news because it always seems to percolate here. After a year-long beta program, Microsoft has finally launched its hosted desktop management service. Desktop management service. Say that 10 times fast. It's called Windows Intune. I really wish that Windows Intune was a cloud-based music service, but that's okay. But it was announced today. It's designed for organizations that have limited IT help, and it's a hosted service that monitors and updates Win 7-based desktop and laptop computers. Does it all from the cloud. So, will desktop management ultimately come from the cloud in the future? Dave?
Yeah, this is one of those killer cloud applications that no one wants to talk about because it's not sexy. I'm sure you guys weren't living it up at South by Southwest last week, drinking martinis and talking about desktop management. It just doesn't,
How do you know?
Carry this. Well, I heard rumors, but ultimately, the ability to drive this stuff out of the cloud and to basically gain access to these desktop management applications and have it come from the internet, versus trying to come from a centralized server that exists within the enterprise, really makes good sense, because therefore you're going to get the patches, you're going to get access to the code sets that you need to get into that need to be propagated and brought down to manage the desktops. Desktop management in large enterprises is a huge expensive problem. Even if you're able to do it 20% more effectively, you're going to be able to save millions of dollars a year. So this is one of those things that, it's a killer cloud application. Lots of people are making use of it right now. It's just flying on the radar because it's desktop management. Who cares about desktop management? Well, large enterprises do.
Well, speaking of large enterprises and someone who actually works with them, Michael, what do you think about this?
VDI technology in the cloud makes total sense, but when you look at the market, I mean, we expected a huge explosion earlier, and it hasn't happened yet. So maybe there's just a delayed effect, but it is a great medium to save a whole lot of money, to simplify, to, as you said, have all the latest security patches. It just makes total sense. And I honestly don't understand what's taking it so long to reach, mainstream.
Yeah, I don't think we're talking about virtual desktops here. I think we're just talking about standard computers that you and I would carry around, and the ability to basically manage the software releases on those computers remotely and manage my email systems, and manage 50,000 desktops in an environment. So it's really not very sophisticated. All we're doing is pushing software releases and control releases, down to desktops from the cloud. So, this market is kind of old. It's been around for a long time. We're just moving it up into the internet. To your point, you're absolutely right. I mean, the virtualized desktops ultimately, we're kind of all that in a bag of chips. Back when virtualization started to arise, hasn't really emerged. But I think that's a 2 to 3 year play. So I think we agree on that.
A lot of agreement. So much love on the show.
We agree. Okay.
Yeah.
But good point though, Michael. Why hasn't it happened yet if it makes so much sense? So we'll have to keep our eyes out on this one. Let's talk about another big player, IBM. This time IBM is offering its cloud to watch the UK's electrical grid. So in the UK, there's been a massive push for quite a while now to really reduce the country's energy use and obviously its overall carbon footprint. So the idea is to use cloud computing to monitor and analyze the British power use. And so the question really with this one, first off, is this more of a PR stunt? But I guess the second question is, many that are monitoring smart grids are really looking to the cloud for this because of the pervasiveness of internet connections to homes and the ability to scale quickly. So is this going to become a trend in the US as well in terms of monitoring our energy use and potentially our carbon footprint? Dave?
Yes, it's a PR stunt, and yes, it's valuable technology. The smart grid is coming to the United States, and it's basically making huge inroads into Europe because of the cost of energy in Europe. So ultimately, we're going to have devices in our house which are going to be able to connect to this grid environment. We're able to, shed load or basically monitor power usage or reduce power usage based on load shedding kind of algorithms, things like that. And we've been working on this technology for years. This is another huge opportunity for cloud computing. If you think about this, everybody's connected to the internet. All these devices and appliances and heating systems and all these things that are going to be connected to the smart grid have to be managed. IBM's taking advantage of that, more or less spin than anything else. But this is going to be a movement over time. Smart grid technology is going to trickle into our economy very quickly. We're going to have very smart devices. We're going to have everybody connected to the smart grid in the next 10 years. And I think IBM's playing that as a smart thing to do. But ultimately, anybody who can get into the smart grid technology should be able to run this stuff out of the cloud. So good job from IBM, and it's a good technology to keep an eye on this show.
And definitely a great use case. I mean, we saw a lot of stuff around the smart grid at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. LG was doing a lot with it, companies like that. So, Michael, what do you think? Is this going to come to the U.S. as well?
Yeah, certainly it's going to come to the U.S. I'm having trouble understanding what it has to do with cloud computing, other than there's a ubiquity that everyone can connect to it. But is it really taking advantage of the qualities of cloud computing, like elasticity or utility computing? I just think you're going to hear cloud applied to everything that's going on in the next year or so. But I do believe it's coming. I have solar panels on my house right now, and I recently co-authored a paper that we presented on how you could take advantage of the smart grid to reduce the frequency of your processors and save power.
We need to get our hands on that, Mike.
Yeah, send it along.
I wish I remembered the title, but it's extremely long, so I'd have to look it up.
Well, it's because you write so many papers.
One of the things to keep in mind and really kind of understand the application of the cloud to this area is the ubiquitous nature of cloud computing. So in other words, we can get at it fairly easy. It's much easier to get at a cloud environment that's really designed to externalize and communicate to any number of different devices, right. Such as the mobile computing movement and the smartphone movement, all these other things. So cloud is really, really good at basically communicating with things that are non-standard. So the ability to communicate with some of these smart grid devices is really where cloud's going to benefit. I mean, he's absolutely right. I mean, it is in essence just a platform change, and they may be taking advantage of some elasticity and things like that, but ultimately they're taking advantage of the ubiquity of cloud computing, and that's really the power that it's going to apply to the smart grid.
Good job there. Well, I know that Dave has to run here very, very quickly, so before we get going, I think we need to see if there's some clouds rolling into the studio.
Shield maiden.
Yes?
Ragnarok is upon us once again.
Who's that?
Oh, never mind. Just go with it.
Okay.
Storm on demand. Storm on demand. Storm on demand is an infrastructure as a service, cloud computing platform that is powerful enough to replace dedicated servers. A proprietary cloud platform designed by Liquid Web, one of the largest web hosting providers with over 12 years of experience. It is easier to use and less expensive than Amazon EC2. Features include server setup in minutes, easy scaling, backup and restoration capabilities, and pay-as-you-go utility-style billing. Options include cPanel, Fantastico, Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, fully managed servers, private networking, and swords like this, and little guys that we do not have in this commercial, but that doesn't matter, because this is cooler. Storm On Demand can be found at stormondemand.com, at Storm On Demand. Ragnarok be damned. Storm On Demand. If you do not get Storm On Demand, I will come to your house with my sword and make you get it.
And these are the little men the wonderful little men, the little angel on my shoulder, Storm on Demand, at Storm on Demand on Twitter. Make sure you follow them. And actually, if you tweet at us and use the hashtag TWICC and say, I want a little Storm on Demand man, we might send you one, if you're lucky. Also, if you have not downloaded that ebook yet from Xenos, come on, xenos.com/cloud. Get that book. So let's have a chat. Oh, there it is. See, Xenos. Let's have a chat now with Dr. Michael Salsburg, Chief Architect at Unisys. Dr. Michael, first of all, many, many papers. We've already talked about that. You can't remember the names of them because you've had so many of them. And you work in the Technology Consulting and Integration Solutions Group. That's quite a mouthful, but it's very important. You've been awarded 2 international patents in the areas of performance modeling, algorithms, and software. And you just recently received the Computer Measurement Group's A.A. Michelson Award for, it's like a lifetime achievement award, really, for numerous contributions to performance modeling and analysis. Oh my goodness, where do we start with this? You also have a recent paper. Do you want to, maybe we should start there. You recently co-authored a paper titled Extreme Capacity Management. I'm just going to leave it at that. Do you want to maybe give us a little of a highlight of that paper?
Certainly. I co-authored it with Steve Guerrieri, who also is this distinguished engineer at Unisys. And the idea behind it is, you know, after all these years of modeling and analyzing performance, I sort of kid around when I do presentations that I've built models of computer performance for so long, and each time I build them, I'm expected to do it with less and less data. And one day I said, I can build a model with no data at all. Okay.
Wait, repeat that. You can build a model with no data at all. That is the quote of the show.
well, that's what I feel like is, you know, it's so hard to get data.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? So when you look at cloud computing, you're expected to do capacity planning, but you don't know what the workload is. You don't know how people are going to use the cloud, because ultimately, if you're a cloud provider, you're just providing, you're like a cup dispenser. You're providing cups. You don't know what they're going to put into it, right?
Very fair point.
So the best you could do is offer like different size cups or different colors, like blue, yellow, red or something. And how do you do capacity planning? How do you keep up with the demand? Because another idea of the cloud is it's supposed to appear to be infinitely elastic. Of course, that's not physically possible.
Right.
But the last thing you want is for someone to get on and say they want to provision 100 servers, and then you say, no, I've run out. That's not good form. So how do you keep up with it? So what Steve and I looked at was a way to really simplify the kind of data you need to do capacity planning and to realize when you're going to run low and when you're going to need to, you know, procure, because clouds actually run on physical things.
Right,
so
exactly. We tend to forget that.
Physical servers. Right. You tend to forget that, you know, all this virtualization, guess what? It has to run on real physical stuff that has to be wired, has to be ordered, has to be shipped. And so the whole idea, it's called extreme capacity management, is what are the sort of the necessary and sufficient parameters you need to look at, and how simple can we make this? Because we want to basically build models for capacity planning with very little data. Now, no data is extreme, but that's too extreme. So basically, we look at 3 sort of styles of workloads. One is very focused on web traffic and requires a lot of network bandwidth. That's sort of the web tier, you know, if you look at the standard pattern. And then the middle tier, the app tier, is more like CPU and memory intensive. And then the data tier obviously has to satisfy a lot of I/O workload. So we look at those 3 basic chunks, and then we basically look at applications and look at their workloads and segregate them into that. And that way you only have to, and then we come up with reference architectures for each of these 3, and it's all pre-integrated like pods. Okay, now we don't look at storage containers where the servers, but basically pods would be, you know, maybe a chassis full of blades or something like that. Okay. And so now you're talking about planning capacity 1 chassis at a time as opposed to 1 blade at a time, or as opposed to trying to lovingly design each one for each specific workload. Because when you go back to the beginning of capacity planning, like when I first started at the Computer Measurement Group in 1984, you would have teams of people just lovingly studying a single mainframe and, predicting how many quarters out they need to do an upgrade. Well, it's the exact opposite now, right? You have a couple people who have to handle an entire data center. So the idea is we need to really look at capacity management in a different way to keep up with what's going on.
Why do you think it is that we're not hearing more about this? We hear about the number of nines, all the time, but why is it that capacity management is so rarely discussed when it's so important?
Well, that's a good question. I guess, listen, first of all, cloud computing is still really in its infancy.
Right.
As much as you hear about it, the only companies who really are going into it in a big way are the very big cloud providers who are, basically wheeling in whole truckloads of servers or containers worth of servers. They have their own way, and they're not really talking about it a lot because, that's their IP. But now we have to bring this down to the individual enterprise level as to how we're going to do this. But you mentioned the nines, and right now when you talk about service levels, that's what we're talking about is how available it is. And
right.
Availability, SL, service level objectives like 3 nines, that's not really enterprise workloads. You got to talk about 4 or 5 nines. But that's not the only kind of service level. The other one that I'm really interested in and don't see a lot about is how long does it take for a service? I mean, this is all really about service orientation of infrastructure. So if let's say I'm going to use a public cloud. I'm going to put my e-commerce application up there. Well, I want to know how long it will take for a customer to say, I want to buy something until it's done.
Right.
Is that a millisecond? Is it 1 second? And you can't get cloud providers to commit to that level of a service level objective. And that's what I'm really interested in. And that goes back to really the heart of what Computer Measurement Group was about. And it has a lot to do with what we focus on when we talk about enterprise-class workloads at Unisys.
So looking at this bit about response times, why is it so important to first consider the response time of apps?
Well, it's all about quality. I mean, you and I know that if we go on a website and we go to order something and it's intolerably slow, we'll leave.
Right.
We'll go somewhere else. So it's about that. It's also, when you're talking about a cloud provider, is how quickly can a cloud provider provide that next server, whether it's virtual or physical. How long does that take? And, right now, of course, at the beginning, it's a new cloud computing is still a new emerging technology. So people put up with the wrinkles and the hiccups and stuff. But ultimately, they will measure quality by that response time that you just mentioned.
Right, right. Talk to me about legacy applications. That's obviously a big topic here. Can they be moved unchanged to the cloud, or do they have to be rewritten more as Web 2.0 apps, so to speak?
Well, Unisys has a secure private cloud where you can move your whole app, and that's sort of how we got started, is you could take the entire application and move it up to the cloud without making changes to it. You still will have the same security and isolation and containment that you would have had in your data center, and that's where we started. But I sort of think, I don't think you have to rewrite it, but you may have to rethink it a bit, because most large enterprises are not too happy about taking their lifeblood, their data, and moving it up to a cloud. Right? They'd rather have it. They'd rather hug that data and make sure it's secure and it follows all the processes they have inside their data center. But perhaps that makes sense if you think about really where you want the elasticity and the ubiquity is on the web-facing side.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be surprised if in the future we see the data tier and perhaps the application tier stay in the data center and figure out ways to move the web tier up to the cloud without having the obvious latency problems that you would have if you just did it, in a very naive way.
Right. Well, to that point, when is it appropriate to use the hybrid cloud approach then?
Well, I think I just described a hybrid approach.
Yeah, no, you just described one, but in general, when is the best? Because a lot of times on the show we're talking about some people will only go private, some will only go public. Are there cases where it makes sense just to have one or the other? I mean, like, what's the best case, I guess, for the hybrid cloud?
I think most enterprises will eventually end up with some sort of hybrid approach.
Okay, that's
because
what I was looking
if you take
for.
your whole application you put up there, you have to move all the data, and if you have like a half a petabyte, you could wait a long time to do that. Having it all up in the cloud, then you have to worry about replication. You have to worry about what happens if you need to move it out of the cloud or you locked in and all that stuff. And some things make sense. Like I could see business analytics, for example. If you're collecting the data and you're just sending it up to the cloud on a regular basis, and then each month you want to plow through it and do analytics, that makes a lot of sense. And the entire application could be on the cloud, and you could take advantage of the the inexpensive storage you can get from the cloud. But when we're talking about enterprise apps, I just think that hybrid is where they already are. I mean, a lot of CIOs are discovering they already have it. They didn't even know that because, they have scientists who already are going to, let's say, Amazon and doing experiments there. Boom, they're hybrid. They don't know it, but they are. So I expect the norm will be hybrid.
Yeah, no, I definitely am seeing that quite a bit as well. Talk a little bit about the implications regarding the application data migration.
The application data migration?
Yeah, so when you're migrating everything over, what about the application layer, the application data?
Well, like I said, it's really hard to tell now where that's going to end up. But if you have a huge database in your data center, you can't afford to move your application up to the cloud because most applications today, at least, are written assuming that the application layer and the data layer are connected on a local area network. And as soon as you break that into a wide area network, you can't tolerate the delays, and your service levels will just go crazy. So the application has to stay near the data. So I would think that hybrid application, the most sense, and I'm just sort of prognosticating here, not a lot of people have done this, but I think that what's going to happen is the web tier probably will break into two pieces. So that you'll have part of the web tier that really needs the app data and has to get back to it a lot, and then you have another part of the web tier that's sort of the front end. It handles all the people coming in from the internet from all around the world, that whole ubiquity thing that we were talking about. And you know how web traffic works is there's this conversion funnel. So you have the wild, woolly internet attacking the front end, and then maybe only 20% goes through that funnel to the next level. And so when we talk about some of the failures we've seen in the past, I mean, I can go back to the old Victoria's Secret story or, the Burger King story. What's that?
That sounds like a good story.
Oh, you know that story? No, well, it was for, I think, the Super... Oh, gosh, I can't believe I'm telling this. Super Bowl, they advertised that Victoria's Secret was going to have a fashion show on the web.
Yep.
Maybe this was before your time, Amanda, but...
I don't know.
But everyone went clamoring, and the website went down.
Right.
It was like, oh, my goodness. So CIOs, one of the most important things is that they remain off the front page of the Wall Street Journal because their website went down. So if you're going to have a huge, storm of traffic, you would rather that happen in the cloud where you can quickly scale up, right? As opposed to having them all come to your data center and then you run out of servers.
Absolutely.
So really, to take advantage of the elasticity and the ubiquity in the cloud, it makes sense to move your web tier up there. I think it's going to be split in half because part of the web tier relies too much on dynamic data.
Right.
And again, you'll have this latency problem.
Gotcha. Well, is there any other news besides what we talked about a little while ago on the Unisys front that you would like to share with everyone?
Well, I think I'm really glad you started with it. We have just announced the hybrid enterprise, and we've certainly spent a lot of time thinking about it. Unisys opened up their public cloud. I don't know if many people know this, but this was in the summer of 2009, so we've been doing it for a while. We have a lot of experience. We've helped other customers become cloud providers. And so from all of our learnings, what we realize is there is no one thing that really being able to take advantage of all the technologies is the best strategy. And we've spent a lot of time on the front end coming up with services to understand the workloads, to provide advisory services, to suggest where the workload should fit, what the best infrastructure should be, and we're very successfully going out and helping customers become either just have a cloud for their enterprise or become cloud providers for other tenants who want to do the same thing.
Great. And if people want to follow Unisys, the cloud practice specifically on Twitter, it's at Unisys_cloud. So make sure that you are following them. Can we get our hands on the paper, the most recent one that is?
Yeah, extreme capacity planning is, I believe it's on the Unisys website.
All right, well, we will get that link for all of our viewers. I'll get you the link. Sure, we'll get the link for all of you, and we'll tweet it out, and we'll make sure that it's posted. So it's about all the time that we have for today. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Michael Salsburg, Chief Architect at Unisys. Wonderful having you on the show today.
Thank you very much. It was good talking to you. Take care.
You're welcome. And I would love to say thank you to my co-host, Dave Linthicum, and I would love to riff on him right now because he's already disappeared on us, but I'm going to be nice today. He's getting on a plane. And thank you to our sponsors, Storm On Demand, at Storm On Demand on Twitter, and at Xenos, Zenoss on Twitter. Make sure you go download that ebook. It's just Xenos.com/cloud, and just download it. You could get an iPad too, potentially. So I know that I want one, and well, I can't enter to win because I'm not qualified, because I'm on here talking to all of you. So go do it. And then if you have ideas for the show, always send them to me, Amanda@thisweekend.com. Same with conference codes, that sort of thing. But be sure to join us again next week, same cloud time, same cloud channel. Until then, thanks for watching This Week in Cloud Computing.